Welcome to the Art of Soft Influence, aligning people around what matters. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen Sweet, and I'll be assisting with today's webinar. We hope you get a lot of value out of this session and enjoy the content, whether you're watching this live or on demand. Today's host is Nilufer Erdebil, who is the founder and CEO of Spring 2 Innovation. She is also a TEDx Ottawa speaker and the author of the international best-selling book, Future Proofing by Design. She has dedicated her career to helping organizations achieve remarkable achievements through design thinking principles. And joining Nilufer today, we have a great guest speaker. Sarah Catherine Gauthier, product manager at Costco Wholesale Canada. Sarah brings more than 20 years of experience in retail, customer service, training, and product management. Through her career, she's been passionate about helping people learn, grow, and achieve their goals. After progressing through roles including Black's Photography, Henry's, and Costco, she transitioned into training and then later product management, where she has spent the last 4 years focused on improving experiences for users and stakeholders. Known for her curiosity, collaborative approach, and commitment to continuous improvement, Sarah excels at building trust, relationships, and turning insights into meaningful solutions. Outside of work, she is also a PADI Master Scuba Diver trainer, helping others safely discover the underwater world. With that, I hope you enjoy today's webinar, and I'm very excited to pass it over to Nilufer and Sarah.
Thank you so much, Jen, and welcome everybody. Welcome, Sarah Catherine. Super excited to have you here. I think I love the conversation after we had you on a few months ago talking about journey mapping, and our conversation afterwards was even more lengthy, and so we thought it'd be amazing to have you come on board. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I really enjoy our little chats, so happy to have more of them.
So, as you guys are getting to know Sarah Catherine and myself, we'd love it if you dropped us a message on the chat. Let us know your name, where you're coming in from. And as Jen mentioned, there's a Q&A section, so feel free to write in the Q&A. And so in order for us to get to know you guys a little bit better, we're going to run a few polls throughout the session, including the first one, which is which one of these do you find most challenging when trying to influence others? Getting people to agree on priorities, overcoming resistance to change, building trust with stakeholders, or turning agreement into action. And Jen, if you could pop that poll open, that would be really helpful. So which one of these do you find the most challenging when trying to influence others? Getting people to agree on priorities, overcoming resistance to change, building trust with stakeholders, or turning agreement into action? And it's funny, as we were preparing the poll questions, we each had our own one that actually impacted us and we found the most challenging. And so I'm really curious to see what the audience is going to say for all of these poll questions. So we're going to give you guys about 10 more seconds to wrap it up. Which one of these do you find the most challenging when trying to influence others? Interesting. All right, let me end the poll. And we're going to share the results. So which one of these do you find most challenging? 47% said overcoming resistance to change. Yep. What do you think about that, Sarah Catherine?
That's my number two, but for me, getting people to agree on priorities. But I guess that also kind of just depends on how many stakeholders and that you're working with. So some people might be lucky enough that that's not as big a challenge for them as it is for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, it depends on what's going on in everyone's environments as well. And so I guess right now it's more overcoming that resistance to change. And we have a second one for you before we kickstart everything is where do you most often need to influence without authority? Across departments, upward to senior leaders, clients or partners, or within my own team? And Jen, could you pull up this next poll? Is it up or? Oh, there we go. All right, fantastic. So for everyone on the call, where do you most often need to influence without authority. So, across departments, upward to senior leadership, clients or partners, or within my own team. So, where do you most often need to influence without authority? And I'll give everybody about 10 more seconds, and then Sarah Catherine, I'll ask you your perspective too.
Yeah. So
All right.
curious.
Yeah, me too. All right. This is interesting. That's fantastic. All right. So I'm just about to share the results. Is looks like 56% said that they are most often needing to influence without authority upward to senior leaders. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And then coming in second at 22% is clients or partners. Sarah Catherine, which one would you have said?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I definitely think that that's an area where I use these skills with that group the most when I'm talking to them. But I actually don't talk with them as much as other people. So I might have leaned a little different in direction just because it was about how often. So it's my most used skill with that group, but I don't meet with them as often as I do, say, my clients or partners or my own team. So,
Yeah, and it's interesting because I also hear a lot. One of the challenges actually across departments too. But again, it depends on the people in here and also the time. And I think for a lot of people on the call, the upward to senior leadership is the one that's most interesting right now. And so, that being said, welcome everybody. Super happy to have Sarah Catherine here. And so, as we get started, I want to kind of set the stage. And so, Sarah Catherine, for you, when you hear the phrase soft influence, what does it mean to you, and how is it different from persuasion and authority? Because we just talked about authority.
yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of different skills, but at the end of the day, it's really about reading the room, being present, and understanding what people need, even when they don't understand it themselves, and trying to help get them all um, in an appropriate place, whatever that is, whether that's looking to align on priorities or whether that is helping to get people to understand why we've chosen a particular path forward, or why a roadmap doesn't look the way they thought it would, or whatever that is. So for me, it's really just about kind of understanding where they're at in the room and then trying to figure out how to get them where we all need to be, or whether it's me who needs to change my course.
Yeah, and you mentioned reading the room. Sometimes it comes naturally to people. Do you have any tips or tricks for people for reading the room?
Yeah, I think body language is something that we subconsciously pay attention to, but we should be paying more conscious attention
Mm.
to it. And also getting to know your stakeholders so that when you're reading their body language, you're actually reading them, not just like applying a common denominator to someone, right? So one of the examples I'll use is like eye contact. Some people just are not good at eye contact, but that doesn't mean that they're not invested or participating or listening to what you're saying. And so it's a lot about just kind of getting to know kind of what people's tells are, maybe a little bit of a
Yeah.
poker face in there, but just understanding kind of when you see somebody react a certain way, really being good at accurately kind of attributing what they're feeling to what that action tells you.
Yeah, and what about for those that do a lot of online and people aren't turning on their cameras?
That's a tough one. And I mean, I'm not afraid to like say like, hey, would you mind turning on your camera so we can talk? And or like outside of the meeting, maybe like if that is the first meeting, like maybe kind of reach out to them afterwards and say like, hey, like, is there a reason that you weren't comfortable? Like, is there something I can do to try and make you more comfortable? Or can we have a one-on-one conversation so I can have a better sense of where you're at? But for me, and I do a lot of virtual work because I'm based here in Ottawa, but my teams are all in Seattle. So this happens to me a lot where they're off camera and I need to try to connect with them, and it's difficult when I can't see them or get to know them as well as I'd like. So I do think like making the effort to meet people in person so that you're not just a floating head on a screen, and give them some like context of how you are as a person, and really giving them something to ground themselves with you. Like, it is about building trust in a relationship. If they don't trust you, they're a lot less likely to want to go on camera, especially if you're recording.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of step back a little and say, okay, if I don't know this person, is there a way for me to get to know them and make them feel more comfortable with me? But in the case where you got somebody who's just really not a camera person, like, then you got to listen a little more to their voice, their tone when they're engaging or not engaging, like trying to prompt for feedback more, because people will sit listening to you nodding their head, but if they're off camera you can't see that. So like actually asking like, hey, like, how do you feel about what I just said, or is that resonating with you, and try to get some feedback. And I think one of the best ways that I do that, or would recommend people try to do that, is by asking questions that are not yes no questions.
Yeah.
Right? So trying to get them to say something beyond, yep, sounds good, or no, I disagree, is going to be really helpful to you when you can't see their face.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a comment around needing good emotional intelligence and cultural humility as well, and that being willing to listen, and like you nailed it, is asking them how they feel, how they think, and creating space, which sometimes people are uncomfortable with, for feedback to come back, or for people to actually comment on what's been said.
Yeah, I love that phrase, cultural humility. I don't think I've heard that one before, but I'm going to thank you, whoever said that, because I'm going to use it.
Yeah, I love that.
I like
Um,
that.
Maybe you shared a little bit about your work experience. Do you mind telling us a little bit more, maybe about a time where you had no formal authority but still had to bring people together? What made the
Yeah.
biggest difference?
I would say actually that's basically all the time for me. The way my organization is structured, nobody reports to me. So everyone that I work with, I use soft influence, because at the end of the day, they have different bosses from me. They are senior to me. These are not people that I have any kind of like understood or ingrained authority over, nor do I see it that way or want it to be that way. I think that that's actually part of what makes me good at my role, is that I'm not just kind of like, I can't just boss people
Yeah,
around.
yeah,
So I do have to treat everyone kind of respectfully, and making sure that I'm meeting them where they're at. And soft influence is the number one way that I do that. And sometimes that's listening, sometimes that's encouragement or training opportunities, or just making time for people to tell me about whatever is going on in their lives, so that I have some context for why they are saying or doing something a certain way. So whether it's my stakeholders or my team, which is, going back to the poll
yeah,
for me, like my team is across departments. Like, I'm personally like organizationally structured under the buying teams, but they're all structured under the IT teams. So we are actually different departments, the people that I work with the most directly. So I always kind of have to have that going for me. And I think it's kind of in my favor that I have to do it with everyone, because then I don't get lazy and assume that I have it with people I shouldn't.
yeah. Oh, that's really good. I think for for both myself, and I've seen it in you as well too, is sometimes that soft influence happens through asking questions as well. And it's the right question at the right time to get people to think a little bit differently too. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I think everyone talks about listening, but people, in my experience, don't just volunteer all the time to
Yeah.
be a speaker or to say something. So I really rely on questions to kind of get a conversation going. And I do think, it doesn't always come naturally to people. Not all of us are chatty Cathys
Yeah.
or, super extroverted. I wouldn't describe myself as extroverted. This is a skill set that I acquired over the years. But you can go in prepared. You can have some questions or have some like fallbacks that you like to lean on when you find like conversations going a little flat or you're not getting the feedback you need. And challenging yourself to try some different tactics, right? Like some people need a softer touch, but other people respond better to something a little bit more blunt or aggressive. And so, again, like just kind of trying to read your audience and adjust your presentation to fit is something that's really key. And I do that a lot with presentations as well. Sometimes I'm presenting to stakeholders, sometimes users, sometimes my pod of developers or engineers. And I might be giving them all three of those audiences the exact same presentation, but I'm going to use different language and I'm going to have a different deck and I'm going to behave a little differently in front of each audience because that's what I have found helps them to relate to me and to respond to what I'm trying to share with them. So you do have to kind of also like be a little bit of a chameleon yourself. It's not just about good listening. It's about how do you prompt a conversation, which questions really help, but it's not just the question. Sometimes it's also how you ask it.
I love
So
that. Yeah, you're so right. Using different language, and I like the tip around having different presentations for different audiences. I know a lot of people have like a master slide deck and then only use certain slides for certain people, but it's maybe going beyond that and using different terminology. And we had a really good comment in the chat too. Product managers are an interesting breed. We have accountability, but without operational authority. However, we have power through influence, and
ain't that
that's
the truth?
it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah, and I think we often hope too, like that the data is going to tell the story we want it to tell. And it should, the data
yeah,
should tell us the story. But at the end of the day, our job is to be the storyteller. So, we didn't come up with the tale, but we need to be the ones who present it in such a way that the audience finds it palatable and wants to hear it and maybe wants to hear it again and again.
yeah. Absolutely. And this isn't relevant just to product managers, I think, in
No.
organizations all around. And it can be within your own department as well, too, because I remember working for a major telecommunications provider in the IT department, and we knew who had influence over senior executives, even if they didn't report directly or indirectly to them. And so did the vendors that were coming to us. They knew who had the influence and tried to influence the influencer.
I think that's a great point too, though. Like, it's not always about the product that we're trying to influence, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's, obviously I have a product and I'm responsible for how well it does, but sometimes pushing the product agenda isn't the way to get there, right? Sometimes it's encouraging somebody on your team to think a little differently or do something or push themselves beyond their comfort zone. Or when you're going into an innovation sprint or something like that, you're giving them maybe a different set of parameters than you normally would. So it's not just about the product. Like, we're not always trying to influence that outcome. We are, like, that's a big part of the job, but I find like I am not the person making the product. I set the vision and the priorities, but at the end of the day, I have very little control over how the team actually builds a solution. But I can do a lot to help them feel more confident about that, to encourage them to go out and explore alternate solutions or methods, or give them the confidence to go back to their bosses to say like, hey, I want to pursue this training because I think it's going to be really beneficial to me in terms of our longer term plan for this product. And I actually find that like those conversations are the most rewarding. Like I love when my product does well, but I love it a lot more when somebody who I don't personally like see myself as being very influential in their lives, but like they come back to me and tell me some personal story about how I just gave them that little nudge that they just ran and flung themselves off a cliff and just landed somewhere really spectacular. And so it's not always about the product itself, I find.
I love that. And I think you hit on a few really fascinating things. We're talking about product management, but it doesn't have to be product management and IT. It could be IT and business, or technology and marketing, technology and sales. It's two teams working together to come up with an end result, whether it's a product, a service, a policy, a process, but it's that being able to positively influence one another.
Even your stakeholders, like don't leave
Yeah,
them out of that group
yeah,
either, right? Because for a lot of them, like they know what they want. They're coming to you with a problem they want solved, but they often don't really understand the process in the background. So also like encouraging them to have that curiosity and to join in as like equals in the process. Like again, like they're not going to build the solution, but the more engaged they are in the process, the better the partnership over time. And so,
yeah.
we tend to think most about the people we work the closest with, but even the people we touch on much less frequent intervals can be really impactful to your success.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, what's one practical habit or mindset shift that's had the greatest impact on your ability to influence without authority?
Honestly, I know this is going to sound really weird, but I think it was the older you get, the less control you feel. I
Yeah.
think you kind of just get to a point where you get more comfortable with your lack of control and you just kind of embrace it and say like, you know what, at the end of the day, I can only do what I can do, and if it doesn't go the way I hope, like maybe that's for the best and that's how it's supposed to go. And for me, I think it was just really um, letting that go a bit and not taking it so personally when things didn't go the way that I thought they were going to go, or to not view that as a failure, because it's not, it's really not. But like sometimes when you're in the moment, you had a specific thing in mind about how this interaction was going to go, it can be really hard not to internalize that as a personal failure. So I do think that there was a point in time where I just stopped caring as much about the outcome. It wasn't about the outcome, it was about whether the people felt supported. And so that shift in mindset for me, where I started to relax more, I ended up being considerably more persuasive because I wasn't trying so hard to force things.
Yeah, it was more about trying to understand the people that were involved and trying to understand the problem.
Yeah. And it was okay. Like it's not a bad thing if
Yeah,
you don't end up where you thought you were going to. And if your stakeholders or whoever else ultimately say like, no, we don't agree, embracing the no and being like, okay, well, help me understand why. Like, oh, okay, like now that's new information. That changes things. I see where you're coming from. Let me take this back and we'll come back to you again. Like, I think that a lot of us just hear no or hear conflict and it's perceived as a bad thing. And I just don't think that's true. I think that it's easy to allow yourself to believe that, but the better thing is to believe that this is just a growing moment or an understanding moment where you just kind of have to rethink whatever it was you're trying to do. And you may still confidently believe it was the best possible thing, but it's not up to you all the time. And so you just have to make the best with what you've got. And okay, like if it's not to be, it's not to be, and move on to the next thing and try not to carry that with you.
I find this really interesting too because you talked about getting comfortable with conflict in a work
Yes.
environment, and that's when you get real alignment is when people are actually stating and having conversations about their perspective, and once you figure out everyone's position and then align around a particular one, that's when things go into fast gear. But in order to get to
Yes.
that point, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because a lot of people find conflict uncomfortable. And so, what's a tip for becoming more comfortable with the uncomfortable?
Um, I think it really is a bit mindset based. So it's I don't I know my job title is product manager, but I don't manage a product. I manage expectations. So when I'm talking to people, yes, it's the product I'm talking about, but the conflict isn't about me or my product really. Like it's a conflict in this person's life, like whatever the pain point is or the problem that we're trying to solve for, like they're the ones experiencing the true conflict. So when we're not seeing eye to eye, that's not a conflict between us, that's more a conflict between me and what I thought I knew. And so, trying not to take it personally, understanding that we're all people. We are not going to agree 100% of the time in 100% capacity. Like I might partially agree with someone. Sometimes that's a win.
Yeah.
And the other thing too that I like to say is I try not to get approval. I try to get alignment. So it's not always about, like, a lot of people feel like it's conflict when they're trying to get like a signature on something or governance to pass something through or to start working on whatever it is that they think is the next greatest thing. But at the end of the day, like, yes, it's a formal approval process, but if you have alignment with everyone going into that, then you don't have anything to stress about. You should know what the things are that are coming up. I see the comment there, like, sometimes it is personal. It absolutely can be.
Yeah.
Again, people are people. We are not going to be besties
Yeah.
with every single person we meet, and that can be really difficult to navigate as well. And so for me, I really just try to take those moments as like, I have to go home at the end of the day and look myself in the mirror. So I want to conduct myself professionally and try to be appropriate. And if I really cannot work with someone, in my experience, in most organizations, there are more formal processes to try and resolve personal conflict. But that is hopefully a more extreme scenario. And most of us can just try to acknowledge the elephant in the room of, like, you and I are just never going to be good friends, but that doesn't mean we can't work together and get the job done.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes people have bad days, including myself. But sometimes I see other people having bad days as well, and it's having a little bit more empathy for them and recognizing how we show up to our work days, how we show up into meetings as well. And there's a lot of empathy involved. And I know I
Yeah.
talk a lot about it in some of our training as well, too, is around how do you show up and how do people in your team show up. And in our last webinar, Kevin Ford mentioned asking everybody, like, how are they today? Because it's about understanding what's going on in each other's lives to hear what perspective they're coming in from.
And I think it ties back to my original comment too, around like reading the room, right? Like if
Yes.
today is not a good day to be
Yeah.
trying to fish for something significant, suggest reconvening at a different time. Like de-escalate before it escalates. Try to like watch the temperature in the room. If you feel like it's rising, figure out how to try and maybe pull it back to what is the common ground that we all share here. Let's try this again, starting from that common ground. Let's not start with the conflict. Let's start with, okay, like, are we all in agreement about what is the problem we're trying to solve? Yes. Or maybe that's the problem, is we're not. And so let's fundamentally make sure that we are understanding. And I think there's a lot of pressure today to move fast all the time. And
Yes.
so a lot of us really hesitate to do that, like step back and go back to the basics or the beginning, or to just like level set in the room with the audience, whoever it is, to say like, I think we're all getting a little away from each other in terms of like the common mission we're trying to share here, and like bringing people back to that. I know I do it on a regular basis, and it's a great way I found to kind of de-escalate some of those scenarios where you see the like temperature rising in the room, is to just bring everyone back to like, let's go back to what we last all agreed on.
Yeah.
And then let's try this again and see where our paths are diverging, and try to figure out if we can all agree to go down one or the other. If there's a third one none of us are even looking at yet.
Yeah, I love what you said just now. De-escalate before it escalates, and then go back to that common ground and then build from it. And I think when I've seen and done that is when things are actually moving forward and everyone feels like they're part of the initiative and the project. When you skip over that part, and sometimes you're right, like I've been in projects where there's been timelines and we're trying to get through it too fast, they come back and there's a barrier, there's a pushback. And so then they're not willing to adopt and accept the changes that are coming in, and you end up with a much longer timeline.
I agree. I think like ownership is very powerful as a soft influence tool, is to give people a sense of ownership. And so there's a few ways you can do that, whether that's just including people in more of the activities that they maybe wouldn't normally be included with, just really transparent communication. But I find one really effective method, especially if you're standing up something new or if you are a new person joining an existing group, is to kind of revisit your charter, so to speak. Make sure that everybody who's going to be really actively involved is aligned on like, what is our mission? What are our objectives? What would we say is in or out of scope? And activities like you're setting your objectives and key results, your OKRs, like when you do those as a team, nobody is made to feel like they're trying to meet a goal that they didn't set, right? Like if we all were part of the process to say, this is the thing that we're going to be working on and try to solve, and this is the mindset that we are all going to share, and maybe have some like definition of done activities, or just working agreements if you need them, if it's a brand new team, but like to just kind of say to each other, like, this is how we're all going to respect each other, and we all have an equal part to play here. And if you have that ownership from day one, it carries through. It's a lot harder to kind of throw someone in towards the end and expect them to have the same level of ownership if you've never treated them like an owner.
Yeah.
So that's another like soft influence skill that I would recommend, if you can introduce that in some way to give people a sense of ownership. That I find that's very effective in making them more invested in working together or with you towards that common goal.
Yeah, and oftentimes organizations or teams might not have a charter, and sometimes those OKRs or KPIs are skipped over or done really fast as a, okay, I got to get this done for my
Or
performance
given to
review.
you.
Or given to you. That's right. Yeah, or given to you
Yeah.
too. And so it's I think it's really important for teams to pull back and, like you mentioned, have those conversations in terms of what are we actually trying to do, and then how do we move forward from there? Because at the end of the day, you need to be working together as a team towards a common goal. And if that goal looks different to everybody, even with the best of intentions, it falls flat.
Yeah. And teamwork is huge, right? Like none of us are doing this alone.
Yeah,
So no
yeah,
matter what your role is, you need your team. So
yeah, yeah, and it's so easy to forget that, yeah, because we're basically our accomplishments are the sum of our whole team, not individuals doing their own thing. That being said, I want to ask one other poll question. Jen, do you mind putting up the poll question? For everybody in the audience, what usually prevents alignment within your team or your organization? Is it different priorities? Is it lack of trust? Is it unclear goals? Or is it poor communication? And I'm kind of curious to hear what people say about this as well too, is what usually prevents alignment? Is it different priorities, lack of trust, unclear goals, or poor communication? Do you have one in mind, Sarah Catherine?
I sure do. I mean, where's the all button? I don't see that.
Yeah, it's so true, right? It's oftentimes it's a combination of things as well, but in my experience, there's one that comes up higher than all the other ones, and so I'm kind of and it's not always the same one. It depends on the team, it depends on the leadership and the culture that's in there as well too. And so I'm just going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. And so it seems that most people feel that alignment is prevented because of poor communication. And then in second place is unclear goals. And what would you say, Sarah Catherine, for you?
I honestly, I think those are both very valid. For me, I would say it's different priorities, but I think a big part of that is because of the scale of what I am usually working on. I have a lot of executives who are
Yes.
not used to people saying, sorry, you're not number one. So different priorities for me is probably the more frequent. But I will say that I think poor communication really applies to all of these because, you know, even if you all have the same goal, if you're not talking to each other, if you're not getting people in the rooms together with each other, and having them have conversations, like it's like the telephone game, right? So if you're passing messages or if you don't have the right people in the room and at the moment that something is being decided or whatever. So I think poor communication really applies to all of those
Yeah.
things. And so I'm not surprised to see it as number one.
Yeah, and they're all related to one another. I find when you can align on a clear goal, then communication becomes easier. But you also need to align on the same terminology. As you know, different audiences have different language.
I know. I often describe my role as a product manager as a translator,
Yeah.
where I am constantly kind of going back and forth. Like both my product, my stakeholders and my IT team, they're both speaking English, but they are not saying the same things when they use the same words. And
Yes.
so a big part of my job is definitely encouraging some clarity there and trying to help make sure that we are all in fact speaking the same language, or at least giving context to people when they're not speaking the same language to help them try to connect or get one side or the other to try and explain themselves using different words. And that's a strategy that I would also kind of really encourage you guys to embrace your inner thesaurus. Like if somebody's not understanding what you're trying to say, don't just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Try to come up with different ways of saying it. Or when you're using analogies, like I have people try to use technical analogies with me all the time. And I'm like, no, use an analogy that we can all relate to. Like, don't talk to me about a startup business. Make it an analogy where you compare it to a house. Like, give me something that we can have some common understanding of without having to have the same educations or backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so, be creative with your words. Try to think a little outside the box, especially when you can tell like there's just something missing the mark and you're just not helping someone connect the dots the way you thought you were going to starting off that discussion. So, like I said, just embrace that thesaurus, try to figure out different ways to say the same thing, or simplify it. Like start simple and build up to details. Don't start at details and then try to simplify it in the other direction.
Yeah, such good points. I know I've been in many sessions where I've been brought in to facilitate, and they are very upset at the beginning of the meeting. And they tell me the other person agreed to something, but then isn't willing to do it now. And I get into the meeting and I'm sitting there and they're saying the same thing. I can understand they're saying the same thing. They can't understand that they're saying the same thing, which is super fascinating, but also um, it happens so often in organizations that your idea on bringing out your thesaurus and trying to come up with different words to say the same thing, or bring it to a simpler analogy, something around a house. Or I also love cooking, and so an analogy around cooking to figure out, okay, what are we actually saying, and that analogy is understood by everyone.
I think it's really common too with parents and kids.
Yes.
Like that kind of dynamic or relationship where I see it a lot where the older generation and the younger generation are saying the same thing, but they're using completely different
Totally.
lexicons of language to say
Yeah.
it. And so they're just completely missing the mark with each other because of that. So even like within my stakeholders, you'd think they would all be speaking the same language, but there can be differences there. Or like this, some people will use an analogy and it's like, man, half the people in this room aren't old enough to understand that analogy. So really trying to like connect with a broad audience. So like cooking, I agree. I like driving too. Even if you don't drive a car, most people like red, yellow, green, or like stools. If I'm trying to explain a three pillar concept, like if I don't have one of these three pillars, I can't sit on the stool without falling over. So, really just trying to pick some sort of very simple common denominator where you're not leaving a lot of room for misinterpretation.
I love that. I have another question for you. How do you create alignment when stakeholders have competing priorities and different definitions of success?
I try to get them to do it amongst themselves. So when I started, and calendars are hard. I don't know about you,
Yeah,
but calendars are literally one of the hardest parts of my job is getting finding an opening where these people are available at the same time. So I used to try to work around that by meeting with everybody individually, but that's not very sustainable for me. And it's not very helpful for them when it comes to competing priorities. So, what I will try to do is get my stakeholders who have their competing priorities in a room together and hash it out amongst themselves. And I act more as a mediator. So, at the end of the day, like I, I'm, I don't have any personal stake in which of
yeah,
these things is prioritized. So my job is to ask the probative questions around like, okay, like let's dig into the ROI of both of these priorities or whatever the determining vote that we think is going to sway
yeah,
the group. And usually, like again, these are people too. They've had to share the stage with other folks at their level, and they've had to work together for things before. And so when you get them in a room, and one of them like can clearly define, like, hey, this I have this much value that comes out of doing mine, and the other person's just doesn't compete, like they back down pretty quick and they're like, okay, well, I'll support yours first, but mine is next. And it's like, okay, yeah, like once I get my thing, I won't ask for anything for a little bit. Now, that doesn't always go as smoothly as you hope in execution, but for me, I think like really at the end of the day, getting them to align with each other. It's not about me aligning with each of them individually. It's about them being aligned to each other and understanding how their priorities are connected or not connected, right? And sometimes the one of them's priority will give the other one some value too, and they didn't realize that because they weren't as close to it. So a lot of
yeah.
times they come out of those conversations feeling like they're actually going to get more, even though they're technically getting less than what they were asking for if their priority wasn't the one that and ultimately is going to go next.
Yeah, and with those conversations, it brings more perspective to all of the parties as well too, because when you're sitting down, responsible for your project or your team or your department, you can only a lot of the time see what's in front of you. And so having those conversations really opens it up to being able to see and learn new things. And that's what we do a lot of through our facilitation, is helping people have those conversations and then being able to document it through as decisions are being made, and asking some of those probing questions to make sure that, hey, is that what you really meant by that? And a good portion of the time it isn't. And so it's, how do we go through each of those priorities and understand it all on the same in the same way?
Yeah, and I do think it makes it easier next time around as well, because the next time they come to you with some new problem they need solved, they're going to be thinking bigger picture in a lot of instances, because they'll have remembered that last experience of like, this actually was impacting both of us and we just didn't realize it. So now I've already done the research and I know this is impacting both of us. And now we're coming to you together as a united team to ask for the next priority. So it does have long-term payoffs as well if you can be consistent about making them work together to resolve their own differences. Then you might find that they're actually going to come to you together in the future as well, which makes your job a lot easier, because then you're not a mediator anymore. They've already hashed it out amongst themselves and you're just like, okay, like I can see everybody is in agreement on this. That makes everything really easy.
Love that. Part of the work that we do have a training course on alignment as well. Like, what are the questions that you need to be asking and agreeing on to make things more successful? And so you can check that out. I'm going to ask a question from our Q&A section, and then as you're answering that, Sarah Catherine, I'm also going to put up another poll question too, because I think this helps everybody understand that they're not necessarily alone and where other people's minds are at. So my first question from the Q&A is, how do you influence without authority when your project or your task is ambiguous and you have to rally people from different teams?
Oh, I think your problem there is an alignment, it's ambiguity. I think that would be your first step, is really trying to um, just clarify exactly what you're trying to achieve. And that, like, alignment comes with that because you might have ambiguity because of competing priorities. So that's where you might have to have some conversations where you challenge those competing things to come back with more clarity and more backup, whether that's ROI, or whether that's maybe you're going out and doing some journey mapping, or whether that is going to the data to see if the data supports something more concrete. But if you start from a place of ambiguity, like, what are you even trying to get people to align to? So I think that you really have to be clear about what you're trying to achieve before you can really start working on alignment.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes time. Like, that's not always going to be a single conversation. Sometimes that's going to be, a few different sessions with different people asking different questions, and then just trying to come back with a clearer sense of what is it that's going on that you really need to try to solve. Or maybe there's 20 things, but like, this is the one we heard the most frequently, or this is the one that we believe has the most impact because of X, Y, and Z reasons, or data, or journey map pain points, or whatever that backup is. But yeah, I think you're not really going to get alignment if you have ambiguity about what you're aligning on in the first place.
Yeah, we do a lot of training and facilitation using design thinking or human-centered design when there's a lot of ambiguity. And so understanding your end users, the people that are involved in the problem at a deeper level through things like personas, journey maps, and empathy maps helps better clarify what the challenge is that you're trying to solve and what success looks like. And then you can go back into alignment. But creating that clarity is really important before you get that alignment. And sometimes the alignment questions can help get that clarity, but if it's too ambiguous and people don't know what they're supposed to be doing, then you definitely want to think about the problem space like Sarah Catherine said, from a higher level, from different perspectives, in order to be able to figure out what needs to be done. And it can be time consuming. Um, if you've done it before, it gets easier and easier. And again, it's a lot about empathizing with the people that are involved in the problem.
One
That
thing I,
being,
I would
oh,
just
go
add
ahead.
on to that,
Yes.
Milford, just to, quickly is you may not have alignment on you can't get alignment on an ambiguous problem, but you can get alignment on how to solve or identify or approach that problem. So maybe that's another kind of way to start is to say to yourselves like, okay, this is kind of what we think we're starting with, but make sure that you have alignment on we're going to come back together on whatever cadence to see if we still feel like that's the problem or can we better define it. So maybe it's just bringing a little bit of that agile mindset to the process of defining what's ambiguous as well. So you can be aligned on how you give yourselves permission to proceed.
I love that. Yeah, and just iterate around it. Our final poll question is, what do you believe creates the greatest influence? And is it trust, shared understanding, expertise, or clear communication? Feel free to vote on the poll. What do you believe creates the greatest influence? Trust, shared understanding, expertise, or clear communication? I'm going to give folks about 10 more seconds to answer that one. And Sarah Catherine, you probably have
We need
one.
another all of the above
All of the
button.
above, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's different. I think this one's interesting because I do think that we all have different strengths that we can lean into. So I don't know that this is a one right answer kind of question, which makes me very curious about the answer.
Yeah. So, what do you believe creates the greatest influence? Trust, shared understanding, expertise, or clear communication? I'm just going to end the poll now and share the results. And so, a lot of people said, 44% said, trust creates the greatest influence, followed by clear communication, then shared understanding, and finally, expertise. Yeah, I think trust is a huge part of influence. And then it's how do you get that trust through clear communication, through expertise, and then creating that shared understanding. Yeah, that's really interesting. What do you think of the results, Sarah Catherine?
I am very aligned with these results.
Yeah.
I think trust if you already have trust, you've spent some time building it and people will be more likely to be honest with you. You have created a safer space for the discomfort, right, of
Yeah.
conflict where if you have a trusting relationship, it's going to be okay if you guys don't agree and you're going to know that you can come back together and work on things. So I do think that trust kind of really solves a multitude of problems, but it's an investment. You can't just go in assuming that the trust is inherently there, that people will just automatically trust you because of your role or your position. And I think that it takes time. And so, if you're earlier on in a relationship, if you are clearly communicating and being transparent with people, that's how you get to trust. So that's why I wasn't surprised to see clear communication as number two, because I think that that's a really good strategy to get to trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. We have a question that we want to leave off with. If you don't mind writing in the chat, if everyone watching could leave today remembering just one principle about influence, what would it be? Do you mind writing it in the chat? Because I'd be super curious to hear your thoughts. If you could leave today remembering just one point or principle about influence, what would you want it to be? And just write it in the chat. As folks are doing that, I want to thank you, Sarah Catherine, for joining us, and everyone online. Thank you so much for joining us as well too. Um, Always interesting conversation, and if you want to hear more, take some time to fill out the survey at the end and let us know other topics that you might be interested in. Um, and topics that you might want Sarah Catherine to talk a little bit more about as well too, that would be fantastic. If you're up for it, Sarah Catherine, I don't want to put you on the
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, for sure. I'd love to come back. I
Yeah,
think these
and
are
so
great conversations, and I like that they're kind of informal. We can see where some of the comments and that take us. So,
yeah, I love that too.
love the audience participation.
Me too. Me too. And so, for those that are watching that have been writing in the chat, in terms of one principle to remember around influence, people are saying alignment is key, trust in alignment, establishing common ground, and revisiting in moments of uncertainty. Alignment, building trust goes a long way. Trust is the foundation, clarity and alignment will lead to success and alignment a lot. So, yeah, that is amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for today. If you are interested, we do have some courses coming up in September, October, and November around design thinking, leading with customer focus, and we also have sessions around aligning for impact, and then design thinking certification, where you learn the methodology to be able to do the iterative clarity from ambiguity to clarity, and also definitely helping out with alignment as well too. You can check it out all on our website, spring2innovation.com. And if you want other resources, we have a whole bunch on our website, and you can always check out my TED Talk too on design thinking in complex environments. And if you want to chat, feel free to reach out to us. Any last comments, Sarah Catherine, before we hop off?
Just would tell you guys all, like at the end of the day, everything we do is about people. And I know that AI is very fancy and it's doing a lot of great things right now and it helps us all. But
Yes.
no matter what your job or your role, we all have people in our lives and we're doing this for people. And so, um, I think that these skills get undervalued and I hope that you all find a bit of a passion for them like I have, because I truly think this is can be a game changer for many people in this industry.
Thank you so much, Sarah Catherine. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jen.
thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.